Sorry, I'm having such computer issues today. Okay, slide
Yeah,
28.
there are days like that. Yeah, it just happens. We're on 29.
Okay, let me see what I can do here. Hold on. There we go.
So nudges are a great tool because they're affirmations. Number one, you're taking what the person has as strengths and abilities, and you are wrapping them in a picture of using those in the world of work. So we use nudges when we identify a hidden asset to employment, when we point it out to the individual without getting into a big, long conversation, and we have that brief interaction. But it has the potential to have a big impact when it happens more than once, and it resonates with the individual. I always take the individual's lead on this. I'll say, do you want to talk more about it? Sometimes they'll say, oh, yeah, let's talk about this. And then sometimes they'll say, well, I got to think about this, or they reject it. And then I'm very respectful of that. This is their conversation, not mine. So then we move on to something else, and we don't get stuck because I want to have that particular conversation. So let's go to the next slide and just let me give you a few pointers about hidden assets to employment and job connections. So when you discover that hidden asset to employment, it could be a brief nudge like, you are so good at that. Have you ever thought about being right? You're so good at that. The conversation may be a little longer, and it may include more about the match in the job or career. Your goal is to make the connection between the asset and a job and let the person think about it or talk more about it depending on the individual reaction to the nudge. Now, in the nudge, you may want to mention an entry-level job that connects to the asset, or you may want to mention a career-level job that involves the asset. For some people, the job may resonate, while with others, thinking about careers may have more of an impact. You may talk about how volunteering could help them build the skills they need, if that makes sense. So the goals are in this nudge assets and strengths and nudge strategy. The goals are to help the individual's belief in their employability and to help focus the individual on job search goals. And keep in mind, we're talking about doing some form of job search activity, even while they may be going through a more involved and in-depth assessment. So we want to get that flame glowing. We want to get that flicker, and we want to blow on it and blow on it and blow on it till it becomes a driving force and the motivation starts to take off inside the individual. Now, I'm very well aware of the many barriers to employment that we find in people who are homeless. And it would be impossible for me to go through every kind of barrier and give you a strategy of how to address every kind of barrier in the context of this webinar. So what I am going to do is I'm going to talk about some different strategies for managing the work on the barrier to make it so that you can have the most impact and be most time effective in the work that you're doing. So if we go to the next slide, let me explain this. So what happens to us when we start hearing about every barrier to employment that they have is we start feeling overwhelmed. And for those of you who've ever lived in a place where there was real winter and snow and a blizzard, you'll understand this analogy. It feels like you're trapped in a blizzard of barriers. There's this problem, there's this problem, there's this problem, there's this problem. And what I find when that staff very often try to work on too many things at the same time, and they end up inadvertently being too haphazard to be effective. So it's important to sort through the barrier blizzard and focus your work on the barriers. To be able to do that effectively, you're going to want to consider one of the strategies that I'm going to be sharing with you now. So let's go to the next slide and take a look at one of the strategies for dealing with the barrier blizzard. So I call this strategy the domino strategy. So with this approach, we look for the one barrier that may be the key to resolving other barriers. If that barrier is resolved, then other barriers will be eliminated or their impact will be reduced. Now, obviously, getting the person housed would be like the principal domino barrier. That may not be possible right at the exact moment that you're working with them. So is there another barrier that can have an impact on these other barriers? I lost the slides. I'm enjoying a meeting. Not sure.
Can other folks see the slides?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can see it.
You
Yes,
lost-
I can.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Slide 33.
Yeah, I'm getting that. I'm getting back on it.
The Zoom gremlins are strong today.
Okay, here we go. I'm on, but I have the phone icon up. So let's go back to slide 32. We're on 33.
Okay, so I have slide 33 up right now. Is that showing for you?
Yeah, I can see it, but I want 32. I wasn't done with 32. So the domino strategy looks for the barrier that if we can resolve this barrier and have the most positive impact on other barriers for this individual. So a good example is helping the person find appropriate mental health treatment and support, a peer support community for their mental health issues could be very, very helpful. So we need to analyze what barrier can move things forward and focus as much as possible on that particular barrier. Another strategy to continue to consider is what I call the quick win. So this strategy focuses on the barrier that's easiest to eliminate, and maybe if not eliminate, reduce its impact. So this strategy might be very helpful for some people that are really cynical about things getting better, because we're going to go for the barrier that has the quick win in it. So maybe somebody needs a bus pass, or maybe somebody just to kind of move, besides moving that barrier forward, just to kind of help them get a more positive attitude about working with us. And if we move to the next slide, to slide number 33, I will show you the last option of the three. And this is the ranked barrier choice option. So we work with the person to help them identify in their terms what the most important barrier to work on first. It may not be what you see as the most important barrier, but it's the most important barrier to them. So we may have a conversation about the things that are standing between them and employment and engage the individual in a sorting out process. I'll never forget this guy, Arturo. If you come to others of my trainings, and now people are homeless, you'll hear me talk about Arturo a lot. He just taught me so much. So Arturo, the thing Arturo loved most of anything in life was not himself, was not any person. It was his dog, Rex. And it became very clear, Rex was very sick. And it became very clear that Arturo could not move on any other issue till we did what we needed to do to improve Rex's health. So that's what I focused on. And that's what Arturo wanted to focus on to be able to move forward. And we got some volunteer veterinary services that really saved Rex's life. Now, whatever strategy you go to use to remove barriers, it's always important to come from a place of strength. So if the individual, as you're learning about this individual, the individual has demonstrated strength in overcoming some things. For Arturo, for example, he had survived the shooting of two of his brothers, the drive-by shooting near their home. And he had already had mental health issues, but he wasn't traumatized by it. He was, but he felt like he had to keep it together, both for him, for Rex, and for his mother, who he didn't even get along with that well, but he needed to keep it together. So there were times when we'd be working on a barrier where I would reference the incredible strength he used to deal with that very difficult time. And that would give him the belief that he could work through that barrier. So it's very important to come at barriers, not just as problems, not just as things that are keeping them from employment, because that's going to make them feel hopeless. Very important to come at barriers from a situation that you find the strength in the person and you reference that strength. If we can go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about employer connections. So I mentioned this earlier. The program may have an employer advisory board. There was a program in Portland at one time that had an employer advisory board. I'm not sure that they still do, but they may have, and it was really great. It was really great. And I helped organize one at the Genesis Alcohol, Drug, and Mental Health Clinic in Milwaukee that basically helped us so much in getting job opportunities for people with substance abuse issues and people who were in recovery and people who were homeless. So the workforce program works to recruit employer volunteers. Now, I'm going to tell you a treasure of employer volunteers in your community. And I know St. Vincent de Paul uses this model a lot in your county, but it was retired employers. Retired employers can be guest speakers, mentors, tutors, teachers, and they have the social capital with their former customers and other employers they know that they can connect them with the people that they're meeting through the work with the homeless employment program. So see if you can reach out to organizations that serve seniors, reach out to organizations like the Service Corps of Retired Executives, SCORE. Look to find retired employers that can help you with this issues. And then also make sure you develop relationships with credible temporary agencies that can provide jobs for people who are homeless. One of the things I mentioned early on in the webinar, and I hope as I'm talking, you put some more things in the chat function, questions and comments, and best practices, if you wouldn't mind putting some of those in the chat function. So when we get to questions in a few minutes, I can respond to some of those. Jamie, I have the phone icon up. If you can get my picture up, that would be great. One of the things that I mentioned is that it takes connections between programs. And one of the biggest barriers to employment in serving people who are homeless is the referral gap, trying to figure out a way to close the referral gap and help people go from one place to another or make contact, whether it's Zoom or whatever, for services. So let me show you how to improve the referral relationship. If we can go to slide number 35. So you need accurate information. You need to make sure that the referral resource is still there, that people are eligible, what kind of documentation do they need. And a big problem for people who are homeless is that they get referred to places that can't serve them or don't exist. These are called referrals to nowhere. It's what I call them anyway. And they will really destroy people's confidence in their ability to get help from the system. Too many referrals to nowhere, and people will not go on referrals anymore. If you go to the next slide, I'll give you some other ideas for making the referral relationship as powerful as possible. Refer people to a person, not a place. Develop a relationship with people at these other places that can kind of be your partner in the referral. People don't like to go to places, they like to go to people. And see if you can make a connection between the person who's homeless and your contact person. Can you do a three-way Zoom, a regular phone call or a Zoom call from a shelter to create a warm handoff situation? So the more you work to create this warm handoff, the more likely it will lead to people accessing the other services. And you'll get much better referral outcomes if you can connect the person you want to refer to someone else who was homeless, who used that referral resource successfully and is willing to, give you release of confidentiality and talk to that other person about their experience. Someone who has experienced that other agency can sometimes make the best pitch about why it could really be helpful. I mentioned earlier I was going to give you some resources. So on the next slide, with 6 resources here that I thought would be very helpful to you. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but I would encourage you to Google them by name and see if that report interests you. I would encourage all of you to get on the mailing list of the National Center on Employment and Homelessness. They put out great reports. As a matter of fact, number 6, Systems Work Better Together, Strengthening Public Workforce and Homeless Service System Collaboration, is exactly one of the examples of one of those great reports. So I no reason to reinvent the wheel here. I think you'll find that these will be helpful. And as I'm wrapping up, before we get to questions, I just have a couple of comments for you. If we can go to the next slide. This is really hard work. I did it as a volunteer before COVID. I've done a little bit of it since COVID, not as much as I'd like to, because I'm having some health issues. But this, if you don't take care of yourself in this work, you can't take care of the people you're serving. There's an old saying, you can't pour water out of an empty cup. And there's 2 types of problems in this work. There are people who are not dedicated enough and don't work hard enough at it. And then there are a whole bunch of people who are over dedicated and they work themselves into burnout. And that's a huge problem in this work. I've done that myself. And it takes a lot for me to be able to say no and to figure out the boundaries of what I can do and what I can't do. The other thing is, while all the funding sources have you check off boxes about different things you do, remember that for every person you help on their journey out of homelessness, they become a role model and a teacher for other people. So you are creating role models and teachers all over the place. You never work with just one person who's homeless. They are very, very generous with that information to help other people. Michael was pretty much a job counselor in my neighborhood in Oakland as he figured out his journey and his way to get to employment. So this is really, the impact of your work is so much greater than what is counted by the funding sources. I just wanted to acknowledge that and hope you take great pride in how much incredible impact and often life-saving impact you're having on the people that you serve. So now let's go to the last slide. I don't know if you can spotlight me or not, Jamie. Sounds like Zoom is off on its own today, but that's okay. So you can subscribe to my free newsletter on my website. There's over 500 articles on the website that you can just scroll through. Lots of information about people with barriers to employment, lots of information about reentry, lots of information about mental health. You just scroll through. As soon as you see an article title that interests you, you click on it and that issue of the newsletter will come up. There are free employment counseling handouts in a section, free handout section on the website. Here's a few of the other webinars that I do that people are finding to be popular. If you're interested in having me talk to you about doing a webinar for your organization, please email me and I'd be glad to have that conversation with you. So now, Maureen, what do we have in the chat function?
Okay. I see a lot of sharing of information. I don't see that many questions, but let me scroll back and see.
Questions or comments?
Yeah, a lot of resources and links are being shared.
That's great.
Let's see. Sorry, I'm scrolling past all the intros. Let me grab it.
Can me chime in and ask a question?
Yeah, I found one, but go ahead.
Hi, Larry. Thanks so much for your presentation. I was curious more. I have a number of clients who are very driven by, kind of this being their own entrepreneur. Do you know, or does anyone else, I guess, could they put in the chat about these entrepreneur kind of resources for Contra Costa County?
Well, when I was asked to do this webinar, I did I wanted some of the local data. People were homeless, but I work typically on my webinars. There'll be people from 10 states or, who knows, all over the world. So I don't know specifically of those resources in Contra Costa County, but let me give you some categories of resources that your county may have where you can find that kind of help. So most counties have a small business development center. And the Small Business Development Center, and I believe you do have one in county, and you may have, your county is so humongous, you may have more than one in the county. And I think developing a relationship with those small business development centers could be very helpful in doing this. And one of the things, for some people who are homeless, they will come in and nobody will know they're homeless and they'll just get the services, right? For other people, it may make sense to see if you can get a cohort together and work with them and have them actually be a support group. I've owned my own business for over 50 years, and I can tell you that it's very daunting work, and it wasn't always profitable. So the small business development centers are one place to look. The Chamber of Commerce very often knows about different programs that can help people who are looking to start businesses. And let me just say something about business startup, so you think about this in different ways. There are businesses like mine. I mean, I've hired and managed in my career over 500 people. I have no employees now. I'm really happy about that. It's not that I don't like people. It's just that when you get into the personnel issues, it's the least favorite part of the work. So one option for people who are homeless, like anyone else starting a business, would be to think about starting a business where you are a sole proprietor and you don't have all that other stuff. Also, do you want to be a brick and mortar business? Do you want to be a pop-up business? Do you want to be a mobile business? So one of the businesses that we helped a guy start when we did the Homeless Economic Development Collaborative, I think I called it the Homeless Employment Collaborative, that's not what it was he did mobile car washes. So you would leave your car parked on the street or in the driveway, you'd make arrangements with him, he would come and he would wash your car. And I can't remember exactly what he was charging, but his work was so good that he got an incredible amount in tips as well. And he loved being around cars. So this is like, wow, how creative is that? There's also another type of small business. It's called a micro enterprise. And there may be a micro enterprise development program, an online one. I know California has an association for micro enterprises. Micro enterprises are things people do alongside a full-time job. So somebody Maria, that I described to you, Maria ran a catering business, kind of when she could, and it was kind of where she put her passion and also helped her to earn some more money and hone some of her skills. So you can be an employer, is one kind of a business startup with employees. You can be a sole proprietor, which is a business that has no employees, or you can run a micro enterprise, which is a small business, very small business that you do that complements the other work that you're doing. So it's important that people learn about, as they're thinking about this, what the process is. Now, it's got to realize that the failure rate of small businesses is very high. Less than 50% of them make it to the second year, and less than 60% of it make it to the third year. So it sounds like a great idea, but it's an incredible amount of hard work. And, you're now entering the competitive jaws of capitalism, and you have to be ready for what comes your way. I'll never forget, years ago, I helped a mental health program in San Francisco, Baker Place, start a coffee shop where the consumers worked, and it was doing fabulous, right? And then they transitioned them out to work in restaurants and other places. And then guess what? A block away, a Starbucks opened and wiped them off the map. You got to be ready. You got to be ready. It's not that it can't be done, but, and I mentioned SCORE. I've used SCORE myself. It's retired business executives that mentor people starting up businesses, and they have quite a few online and now some in-person workshops that I've taken for my own business. I think most people do this better if they have a mentor, because there's just too many think on your feet, go fast kind of thing that you can't quite figure out. But thank you for your interest in that. I think it's a real gap in the conversation we have typically about people who are homeless and employment, is that ability to start up a business. I don't know if I haven't heard of this program for the last maybe 2 years, but there was a national program called Defy Ventures. And Defy Ventures' mission in life was to help people in reentry start small businesses. And they developed a very sophisticated model. And for a while they were operating in the Bay Area, but I don't know what's happened to the program. So I think there's a lot, some people won't make a good employee, but they'll make a great business owner. So thank you for your interest in that.
So Larry, I've been dropping links to all of those in chat as you've been talking about them. And I also dropped in the link to the Renaissance Entrepreneurship Center.
Oh yes, that's another program. I don't know if they're still operating in Richmond. They're San Francisco based, and they've been in San Mateo.
Oakland, they've been in Oakland. Yeah.
They've been in Oakland.
Yeah.
And the other thing is in San Francisco, La Cocina, which specializes in helping immigrant women start food-related businesses, catering, restaurants, food trucks, that kind of thing.
And there's a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce specifically, and a Black Chamber of Commerce. So, yeah. And
those are the kind of business partnerships you want to look to develop and to cultivate. I, as a private sector person who spends part of my time as a private sector consultant, I know that there's a lot of businesses that have no interest in this issue at all, and that blame people who are homeless for their situation and don't look beyond it, right? There's also champions for this work in the business community. If you can find them and if you can give them a place where not only hiring, but their advice, their mentoring, their connections, their information can be very helpful. There is a type of business called a B corporation, like in the letter B. And a B corporation is a tax structure that allows an organization that becomes a B corporation to basically do things differently with their books legally and get incentives on their taxes for what they do as a community service. There is a Bay Area B Corp Business Association, and on their website, they have a list of 300 businesses in the Bay Area that are B Corporation businesses that would be the kind of people that would be more progressive and more liberal in terms of wanting to find a way to play a role in this work. So you'll find them in different places. There may also be a faith-based business association, which can combine some different things, bring you that kind of element. What I see wrong in employment work around people who are homeless, and this is not because people don't want to do it because they have no time, but the work is so consuming, is that employers are external and they're not a well-woven internal partner into the work. I think Portland has done a really great job with this. They have the head of their workforce board sitting as, I think he's a vice chair of the continuum of care. So they have like blended these things at the very high level, and that's an ongoing conversation. So finding ways to bring them into the picture, I think results in definitely better outcomes for people who are homeless. You know, all it takes is an employer finding out that they like somebody who's homeless. You know, life has a great influence on hiring and how much people will do for people. And barriers to employment become less important to them because they like the person so much. Now, the problem with the like factor is it also is where a lot of implicit bias lives. And why do you like this person over that person can often be a question of racism or homophobia or sexism or some other kind of issue getting in the way. But think of employers not as an outcome or an afterthought, but as a partner. And you'll do a lot better in the long run.
So Jamie, someone was asking, can we just send an email with all these
Yep.
links after? We
I
could
was
do
just
that.
going to say, I'll
Yes,
pull the
okay.
chat and grab basically all the links and try and categorize them. We're also
Okay,
going to post the slides and the recording. So that will be available for everyone. And I'm going to follow up with an email to folks that has, again, a link to the survey, which I'm going to drop in here again, but also a link to all those materials. And in fact, I'm going to just, for folks that may not have it, we have a webpage that has all of our past trainings. And I know we have like 1 minute left. So I think we will wrap up. Larry, this has been incredible. And I really, really appreciate your wisdom and your spirit and your knowledge. And really, it's been really a fantastic training. So I'm gonna drop in the link again, drop in the chat, the survey, so you can let us know what was helpful, what would make it better for future. This is fantastic. And I think that's all we have time for today.
Well, I just want to say, first of all, please do fill out that survey. It's going to be sent to me as well. And I'm always looking to learn more about what works and what I need to do to improve my work. So please take the time to fill that out. And I just want to, again, thank all of you. And I want to thank Maureen for initiating this invite and Jamie for making this so easy. And believe me, I have had many more technical problems than what we had today. So I know it's not on your end. Zoom is not perfect by any means. So I talked recently to a Zoom representative and I said, you know, this thing is a work in progress. Let's admit it, you know. So, and to all of you doing this very difficult and important work, please, please take care of yourself so you continue to do it and have as much impact as possible. Thanks so much for giving me a great day. I really appreciate it.
And I just wanted to plug Larry. So I dropped the link to his site into the chat. You'll get that. But I would urge you to subscribe to his newsletter. I subscribe to very few newsletters because I don't have time to read. His are not at all spammy. They're chock full of information. You can glance over it. You can click through the links and get as much as you want. But it's totally worth subscribing to his newsletter because this guy has like eyes and ears everywhere. It's like, how does he know about that? It's good, great resources.
I make it all up, Marie. None of it's true. I do want to put in very quick thought. On December 14th, I will be doing a webinar for the California Workforce Association, which is our statewide workforce association. And it's called You Can Be a Change Agent, How to Improve Employment Motivation in the Hard to Employ. So I hope you'll think about taking that. A lot of information that I didn't cover here is in that webinar. And on the California Workforce Association website, the last two webinars I did for them are recordings, and the webinars are $59 a person. So I did one, Are You Working to Burnout or Working to Wellness? How to Reduce Stress, Anxiety, and Burnout in Workforce Development Organizations. And I did this one as well for them last month. So I hope you join me on December 14th for You Can Be a Change Agent, How to Increase Employment Motivation in the Hard to Employ. Thanks to all of you. Great day. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Larry.
And I just dropped his website in the chat again. People were asking about how to sign up for his newsletter. It's www.larryrobin.com.
And I just dropped in the link to the California Workforce
Perfect.
Association. So thank you everyone for sticking in here. We had like over 100 people for much of this. So thank you all. Have a good rest of your day and watch your email. You'll get more information.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your afternoon.